Hi, I'm David Macias, product marketer for MongoDB Charts, and this is the What's New in MongoDB Charts product demo. We'll be covering a lot of our larger new features that have been added over the last several months, including chart support for Atlas Data Lake, the new chart type, combo charts, the ability to do conditional formatting on table and number charts, the ability to import and export dashboards, and drilling down into chart data. We'll also cover some more minor customization and other little features that might be useful to you. Okay, now that we're in MongoDB Atlas, let's go into Atlas Data Lake to begin our demo. Atlas Data Lake is a distributed query processing engine in MongoDB Atlas that allows you to query data in place across multiple sources using MongoDB's Query API and all the MongoDB tools you're already familiar with, like MongoDB Charts, for example. So now that I'm in Atlas Data Lake, let's look at the data lake that I've already configured for the sake of time. As you can see here, I have three data sources. The first is a Parquet file of all my customer data that is stored in AWS S3. The second is an Atlas database with my US contract data. And the third is a different MongoDB Atlas cluster with Canadian contracts. Now, I've put these in Data Lake where all the contracts are now in one collection and the customer data is in a separate collection. For the purposes of this demo and all the other features I'm going to demo, we'll be using this telecom company's sample data. Again, contracts for my customers in the US and Canada, and the customer data profile that potentially came from a CRM tool. Now that we know what data we're working with, let's make our way over to Charts and begin this demo. So first, I'm just going to show you how you actually add Atlas Data Lake as a data source within Charts. So went over to Data Sources, and if you've ever used Charts before, it's just like adding a database or collection from MongoDB Atlas. In fact, I've already added the Telco Canadian contracts, Telco US contracts that are directly from Atlas, and I went ahead and added my data lake as a data source as well. In fact, I added a dollar lookup just to make it a little bit easier to work with, and I already have all the data in one place. Okay, let's get to building some charts. So I'm actually going to create a new dashboard and call it All Customer Data. I'm going to add a new chart, and I'm going to choose the data lake as my data source, and I'm going to use the column chart to build a histogram. And just so that you can see, I actually have all the fields here from both my contract data and my customer data. But just to prove to you that it's working, when I show you the country as the x-axis, so I'll have both US and Canada, and then the number of contracts per country, you'll see that I can see both US and Canada. However, if I change my data source to just being the US contracts data source, which is directly from Atlas as opposed to Atlas Data Lake, you'll see that I'm only seeing US now. And in fact, there's fewer fields here. Again, because this is just a smaller data set directly from Atlas. But because once I connect to Data Lake and I use the dollar lookup, which is very similar to a left outer join in SQL, I actually have all the fields from my contract data that's in Atlas and my customer data that's been put into an S3 bucket. And I join them on customer ID. So this just shows you I can easily visualize data across MongoDB Atlas clusters or databases and an S3 bucket by using Atlas Data Lake as my data source. Okay, now let's move on to the second major feature I want to highlight, and that's combo charts. A combo chart is essentially a column chart with a line graph overlapped on it. For this chart, I want to see the relationship between the number of add-ons that our customers have and what their monthly average value is of their contract. As you notice, I did something really cool and unique about MongoDB Charts, and I'm visualizing nested data, so data that's in an array. And so what I'll do is I'll create essentially a histogram of the number of customers I have with how many TV add-ons they have. And then with the line, I'm going to see what their monthly contract value is. So I'll put that as the line graph, and I'll do the mean. Oh, one thing you'll notice, it doesn't really tell me much, and that's because the scale of the line graph is much different than the scale of the columns. But we have another relatively new feature that really helps with this, and that's a secondary y-axis. So I'm going to go to mean monthly charges and plot it on a secondary y-axis. Voila! As you can see, there's a pretty obvious relationship, and the more TV add-ons a customer has, the higher their monthly value of their contract is. I'm going to do a couple other quick customizations to my chart just to make it a little bit better looking. So I'll go to General and put the legend at the top since we now have this y-axis on the right. I'll give this chart a title, TV add-ons by monthly contract value, and I'll give it a description just to let the user know that it's actually all customers. Another relatively new feature, just being able to add more information to our charts. So I'm going to save and close, and just like that, I showed you how you can visualize data on Atlas Data Lake using a new chart type, combo charts, a secondary y-axis, changing the location of the legend, and adding a description. So now I'm going to back out of this dashboard and go into another dashboard where I already have a pre-made table chart that has basically some of my contract data and a lot of my customer data already combined into one table. What I want to do is use one of the latest and greatest features of MongoDB charts, which is conditional formatting, so that I can highlight what I think are some of our most high value customers. And so to do this, I'll open up the chart, I'll go to customize, and I'll start going to conditional formatting and creating some formatting rules. So first, I want to create a single color formatting rule based on the monthly charges or the monthly value of the contract. So any contract worth $100 or more, I want to make the background green. You can see just like that, it already shows up on the chart as I'm building it. Now I want to create another rule that's a color scale. I want to do this based on late payments. Because 0 is good and anything above is bad, I essentially want to make it go from green to red, but I want to switch this so that lowest 0 is green and anything above is white to red. And you can see that's quickly applied to all the cells in this column. Lastly, I want to add something that's across the entire row and not just the cell. So anyone that has a 2-year contract, I want to be put as green because they're our top customers. So contract equal to 2-year, and I want it to appear as green, but I'm going to do light green and format the entire row. And now you can see these are my top customers. One thing to note, if I drag this to the top, it will now overlap. So depending on the order you have it, it shows the precedence of what color the cell is showing. I'm going to put this back at the bottom because I want to see the late payments and monthly charges highlighted over it. Lastly, the other thing you can do if you need to, if I drag these out to be bigger cells, I can actually do column pinning. This is basically like freezing a column in Excel. And so whenever I scroll to the right or left, it'll make sure that I can always see the customer ID. So that is our conditional formatting demo for the What's New in MongoDB charts. So now I want to show you one of our absolutely latest features that's been released in MongoDB charts. And that's the ability to export and import charts dashboards. So you can see here, I have a dashboard with several charts, including some number charts that show conditional formatting, and it's connected solely to my US contracts data. But perhaps I want to actually have the same dashboard pointed to my Canadian contracts data. But I don't want to have to recreate all the charts in a new dashboard. So I can export this dashboard and actually import, choose the .charts file that it just saved as, click Next, connect it to my Canadian contracts data source, and like that, I have another dashboard. And you can see here now, there's fewer customers and the amounts are different. Now I have to change the title of this chart and quickly change the title of the dashboard. But you can see it imported everything from the chart types and the conditional formatting rules and any other customizations I made. So while this is one case that might be connecting it to different data sources such as regions, or if you have dashboards you create on a customer basis and you want to just recreate that dashboard without having to recreate all the charts by just pointing it to different data sources, you can now do that with our export and import feature. You might also just want to be able to create a dashboard in a development or QA environment and then put it into a production environment later. Lastly, we have a relatively new feature called Data Drill Down. So as you can see here, I have several one-year contracts. If I right-click and click on Show Data for this item, I can see all the documents that make up one-year contracts. And I can view them all as a table or in JSON format, for whatever reason is more suitable to me. That concludes our What's New for MongoDB charts demo.